Peace and blessings. Welcome to another session of Dark Matter Readings, a New Birth Energy podcast brought to you by myself, Majestica Melanin, sponsored by the New Age Society. And the last podcast that we left off, um, Quarantine Dreams, was a combination of dates that were previously recorded according to the moon cycle. And those particular inserts were strung together. So if anybody was confused, yes, I left the dates on purpose just so that um, we can have a timeline of 2020 and that we could see the progression of the moon cycle as well as the human cycle and how they coincide. But nevertheless, there was a book that I mentioned on the last podcast. Please go back and listen again. That was a very, very important podcast. Um, just go back and listen to it, catch up to this podcast because I'm just going to keep going. I'm not going to talk too much because I want to get into the reading that dark matter readings always brings to the channel. And it's for your awakening. It is for you to go and do your own research. I am going to read an insert from Ancient Egypt, Light of the World by Gerald Massey, um, however you pronounce. So, what I'll do is, if you go back and listen to the previous podcast, I was explaining what Gerald Massey did in his time, who he was, his controversial writings, and his in-depth knowledge of ancient mystery systems and how basically our origins can be found in his works. So I began to dig just by being a student myself and a advocate for the master teachers like Bobby Hemmett, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Delbert Blair. A lot of our master teachers who are no longer here, rest in power, have left gems for us to follow and to carry on their legacy. And that is what I plan to do with this channel and with the information and the knowledge that I will be sharing each session that we are here for overstanding, understanding, and understanding. So I'm going to read from page 11, and it's basically beginning with the first lesson of symbolical language of animals and the zoo types that the mysteries of mythology often um, attempt to simplify for us. And as I said before, language um, in its primitive form was more of a sound or um, a body language, a sign language basically, and it transferred into the animals and is the reason that we speak the languages that we do today. So it's very interesting to see the transformation of communication, if you will. So certain primordial, types like, a cow or a rose, or things in nature that um, represented Mother Earth and her womb and her children, and those types of things play a significant part in the formation of language and how we began to communicate, and which leads us up to present day, and why we speak the way we speak, and why do we use English as a form of communicating. Okay, and for those of you who are not interested in the origins of language, this podcast may not be for you. Yet, if you are opening up your third eye, your first eye, you should be expanding, your palate, expand your mind, expand the things that you normally would not tap into, because it has a lot to do with um, how we are today and how we got to where we are. Okay, so let's see. Let's start. Alright, so I'll start on page 11, like I said. So, in the most primitive phase, mythology is a mode of representing certain elemental powers by means of living types that were superhuman, like the natural phenomena. The foundations of mythology and other forms of the ancient wisdom were laid in this pre-anthropomorphic mode of primitive representation. Thus, to summarize a few of the illustrations, the typical giant apap was an enormous water reptile. The typical genetrix and mother of life was a water cow that represented the earth. The typical twin brother were two birds or two beasts. The typical twin brother and sister were a lion and lioness, and the typical virgin was a heifer or a vulture. The typical messiah was a calf, a lamb, or unbu, the branch. The typical provider was a goose. The typical chief or leader is a lion. The typical artisan is a beetle. The typical physician is an ibis, which administered to the enema to itself. The typical judge is a jackal, whose wig and collar are amusingly suggestive of the English law courts. So the jackal, the wig, and they also say cynocephalus. I gotta look that up. So if anyone knows, it's CYNOCEPHALUS. So that's probably another name for a jackal. But nevertheless, the wig, whose wig and collar are amusingly suggestive of the English law courts. Each and all of these and hundreds more preceded personification in the human image. The mighty infant who slew the dragon or strangled serpents while in his cradle was a later substitute for such a zoo type as the little Echinumon, a figure of Horus. The Echinumon was seen to attack the cobra, Decapella, and make the mortal enemy hide its head and shield its most vital parts within the protecting coils of its own body. For this reason, the lively, daring little animal was adopted as a zoo type of Horus, the young solar god, who in his attack upon the Apap serpent made a huge and deadly reptile hide its head in its own enveloping darkness. But when the figure is made anthropomorphic, and the tiny conqueror is introduced as a little hero in human form. The beginning of the mythos and its meaning are obscured. The ichneumon, the hawk, the ibis might attack the cobra, but it was well enough known that a child would not. Consequently, the original hero was not a child, although spoken of as a child in the literalized marvels, miracles, and fables of the infancy. And who does that remind us of, guys? Hawk, the Horus, the Ichneumon, Ichneumon, which means the hawk. And I love words because the Ichneumon, it looks like German, a German word, Ichneumon. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it's the hawk. It means the hawk, the mighty infant who slew the dragon or strangled serpents while in his cradle. That reminds us of who? Thor or Zeus, or what's the baby that had all the powers, and it's saying that with those type of pre-anthropomorphic modes of primitive representation, we began the mythos and the meanings became obscured. All right, so that just reminds me of baby Jesus, okay? It's well known that a child would not attack a cobra, but the hawk would. So the original hero was Horus, but they utilized baby Horus to be the strong one that made the mighty serpent basically just coil within itself and hide its head, and also shielding its most vital parts within the protecting coils of its own body. So that could be taken, you know, please do not take these things literally, guys. This is representation of the body itself. The body. There's two truths. There's the body spirit and there's the physical body. Okay, so and animals represented, the zoo types. This is where mythology comes from. Okay, let me read this part right above that paragraph. It's saying this primitive language is still employed in diverse forms. It is extant in the so-called dead language of the hieroglyphics, the ideographs and pictographs, in the totemic types and figures of tattoo, in the portraiture of natural powers, which came to be divine at length in the human likeness. So divinized, they made it in a human likeness as the gods and goddesses of mythology. And in that language of the folk fables still made use by the Bushmen, the Hottentots, and other Africans, in which the jackal, the dog, the lion, the crane, the white vulture, and other beasts and birds keep on talking as they did in the beginning, and continue more or less to say in human speech what they once said in the primitive symbolism. That is, they fulfill the same characters in the Martian that were first founded in the mythos. It has now to be shown how the mythical mode of representing natural phenomena was based upon this primitive system of thought and expression, and how the things that were thought and expressed of old in this language constitute the primary stratum of what is called mythology today. There it is. Okay? So if you have to rewind this, because I know my reading was kind of jacked up in some parts, but for the most part, you should be able to catch everything that I'm saying about, the primitive languages that we still use. And they've been slightly changed, altered, and misconstrued in a way. But we are here to learn on Dark Matter Readings. You are listening to Ancient Egypt, The Light of the World by Gerald Macy, page 11. And we are just tapping into the beginning and how sign language was used as a substitution for many purposes of expression, just by us and animals. Sounds were very important, human gesture. And these same sentences and things, utterances that we're using today originated in mythology and, totemism. There's so much that we have yet to uncover about the animals, and that's why nature is so very important, because we basically named all of our attributes and characteristics according to how the animals behave. It says here a frog was a type of transformation. And we all know how frogs are, turned from tadpoles into the frog. So that's a form of transformation. Um, let's see. It was also applied to the changing moon, as well as to the Zulu girl, Chafalini. Nchafalini. Nchafolini. I have to look her up. She's a Zulu girl. She must be important to the African, mythos. So this book is very, very, very deep, family, and I need you to get it if you can. It's kind of expensive, but it's very well worth it. It's over 600 pages, I guess. Let me see. Yeah, close to 600 pages. There's a glossary in the back that breaks down words. And I'm going to read a few of those words. Let me find it's at the right book, because I have several new collections. And it basically breaks down, words and symbols and signs. Another book that is a great addition to this one that I'm reading is Gerald Macy's other book called A Book of the Beginnings, Volume 1. And that is where I really, really can grasp what this Ancient Egypt Light of the World book is basically breaking down. So to work with both of these books at once has been very, very eye-opening, and I could understand so much better. So again, I won't continue reading. I just want you to know which books that are pertinent to tap into to gain a better understanding of, our origins as human beings, as star seeds, how life and death works, how the world began, how are we speaking English instead of Spanish or French or German, and why are these other languages even existing if, you know, we didn't get it from somewhere. From Moses to, the Egyptian deities, Adam Ra, Horus, Isis, Mayat, the Great Mother, Kefa, Chava. There are so many different names that we say today that originated from our ancient ancestral tongue. Okay, a lot of Hebrew is throughout. So yes. So I won't read anymore. I want you to go and get this book. It will bless you. It will bless your mind, body, spirit. I thank you for listening in and being a dedicated follower of this channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. And, go visit myloudwhispers.com. Go visit protectmymelanin.com. And you will be able to contact myself and my crew. And, if you have any questions, if you need any services, we can also refer you to other people who provide, you know, very, very spiritual and mind building service for you. So, yes, tap in, family. You have been listening to Dark Matter Readings, a New Birth Energy podcast, a New Age Society. If you want to join New Age Society family, please visit our Patreon page. Become a Patreon. You must be a Patreon to be part of New Age Society. It will be very, very, very transforming if you join. I won't speak on it anymore because it is a private organization. It's not even an organization, it's a private society. So if you would like to learn about more of what we do there, go to Patreon, blackrain.com. All right. And I am out of here. I just wanted to come back for part 2 of the previous podcast. Stay in tune for September 19th. I will be doing a very, very special podcast concerning Cardi B and Meg the Stallion's new single WAP. Let's break it down. Let's tap into the word WAP and where we're going and where did it originate. All right, family, I'm excited about that. I plan on bringing some very eye-opening information when it comes to WAP. All right, so until then, stay blessed, stay safe, stay uplifted, stay encouraged. We are here to protect your melanin. And I'm Majestica Melanin, and I'm out. Peace.